Tessa. Hello. 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 All right. Input, output. Okay. Hello. Hi, Robin.
Hi.
Well, it doesn't look like anyone else is coming.
It That's pretty typical. Okay, there we are.
I
Oh,
did get
yay.
an email from one person that said she would not be attending, one of the four, so.
I'm not surprised. Um, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
perfect.
Okay,
I'm
good.
so used to a learning management system that doesn't allow me to, you know,
Ah,
that is so hinky with this. Okay, it finally worked. I'm amazed.
okay, so what questions do you have for me?
Um, okay, I had two questions because what I want to do is I want to and don't mind me if I'm not using the video. It's
That's
just one of those
fine.
days. um, I did. Okay, one second. Let me get pen and paper. Um, I was looking at the coding,
Mm-hmm.
and because it's kind of okay. I need to do a little bit more on the coding before I do anything with it. In other words, I need to understand it a little better because I'm getting my proposal to my committee. I'm trying for this week.
Okay.
Okay, so and that may be too much information, but I think I need to I have a simple idea of what the coding is, and I believe I do in terms of what I'm going to do because I'm doing interpretive phenomenological analysis. But it's going to be a mixed method study.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll have a combination of types of coding.
Okay.
Okay, so for that coding exercise, do you want just a okay? Let me ratchet it back. What do you want specifically on that? Do you want to just see a paragraph or two on coding or and how we think it might go or
Yeah, so I posted a Excel and a Word file with some responses to a survey. So if you didn't have coding, you could try to go through that file and code what you saw as a way to kind of practice coding if you don't already have text. So in your case, you probably don't have data yet, right?
no, I don't.
Because you don't even have your proposal in.
Right.
So I would recommend using the Excel file that's a practice file
Okay.
that's in the module for this week, and then go through and code. And I did post two examples, two little short 5-minute tutorials, one on how to code in Word and one how to code in Excel. And watch that first, so because I kind of talk through like why I'm coding what I'm coding for like a few of the lines.
Okay, excellent.
And then I would recommend using Excel for your project because you're going to have a good amount of data, and it's easier to sort in Excel
Okay.
and rename your codes and add columns. Like say you code and then you start seeing patterns and you want to set up categories, you have the next column. But then you might want to also look at, like, is this a positive or negative thing, and you have another column. So you can code at multiple levels as you go, and then you can sort by those columns to look like at all the positive comments, all the negative comments. Look at the category, look at what you're coding. So it's just a matter of kind of jumping in and trying it. Um,
Okay.
Coding's very fuzzy, so I just finished a 7-week face-to-face course with a group of undergrads, and the whole time they were like, we can't do this, we don't understand this. I went through the entire process. And then finally, in like the last class, they were like, oh, I get it, because they were like trying to write up what they found.
Oh, yeah, transcribe. Yeah.
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 So I think it's like it's really fuzzy, and there's not a right or a wrong way to do it. So you have to kind of just jump in and try it. There's also some great links that I posted of Graham Gibbs. The first one in the discovery part is just kind of talking about what coding is. But then he actually goes through some text that's like typed in Word, and he talks about coding. Like when you start coding, you kind of do this like literal coding. This is about this. This is about that. But then you get more conceptual. Once you start seeing the literal coding, you're like, oh, these are all about this one thing, which is more like an abstract or a conceptual idea.
That makes sense.
So it's not like you go through it once, you go through it many times. And each time you're kind of refining what you've coded the last time. So it's going to be hard to do, which is originally I wasn't going to start this until next week. But looking at the pre-course surveys, this seemed to be a what people really wanted to know about. So I kind of moved some stuff around in the course to kind of put this a little bit earlier so people could try practicing this week, and then next week we could get into it in a little more depth. It's not
That
easy.
makes sense.
It's not easy. Everyone's like, oh, this qualitative stuff is easy. You just read the text and say what you see, and I'm like, no, 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 no. It's not easy.
Don't mind the chat feature. I hit one of the number pads, so
That's okay.
No, the way you're approaching this is really good, I think, because it's better for me to be able to look through some of this and then talk to a person about how they did it. So
Right.
thank you. That's perfect.
And I think in your case, I think the logic model is helpful for you because you're kind of in the proposal phase of trying to think of that bigger picture of like what you're trying to do.
Right. Well, and I need to put together a logic model as far as the theories and everything else for my proposal, and that's what and it includes why I'm choosing the qualitative methods I'm choosing.
Right, right.
And to try to convince some people that it really is an uphill battle sometimes with qualitative, with people who want to chunk things in quantitative ways.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's the difficulty. So this makes more sense, and as long as I have examples, I'll be good. Okay. So tell me, are you an adjunct, or do you work?
No, I am a tenure track. I'm in my third year of my tenure track quest towards tenure in the library.
Excellent.
So my background is not librarian. So I have a doctoral degree in education, and I was working in a unit like a teaching center unit, which got reorganized about 3 years after I moved to Utah. And I had been doing some research with librarians on visual literacy concepts.
Oh, great.
And so they were like, no, you're not leaving. So when there was a reorg, they're like, we don't want anyone full-time. We just want to hire part-time graduate students. So the library kind of adopted me because I had curriculum experience and assessment experience that they were kind of lacking. So I've been in the library for about 4 years now, and it's been really fun because there's a lot of library instruction that needs to get done. And then I also teach for other units on campus. So I'm teaching this 7-week qualitative class for health science students who next year will be applying for research assistantships.
Oh, great.
So they get there and then they don't have any research experience. So 2 of my students from last year are now working with a nursing faculty on doing a study on diabetes and menu and nutrition, like menu planning and nutrition. So they're taking the qualitative skills that they got in my class and then they're using it in their research project. So it's kind of fun.
That's great.
Yeah. So we have software in our library to do it. To do qualitative called NVivo, which I didn't get to teach them in 7 weeks, but now I'm working with them in like a research group consultation mode where I'm teaching them NVivo so they can all work in the same file and they can all code, and it's really fun. But I love qualitative research. I had to do both as part of my training, which is what you're going through. But I did have an opportunity to just do a qualitative dissertation, and then I really feel that we get a lot more information from qualitative than we do from quantitative. So I'm pushing that in the library as well. And I have found, I did a research study with a group of librarians across 7 different libraries, and we collected data from 20 different libraries. And I found that they really don't have qualitative experience. They have quantitative experience, but not qualitative, which is why I wanted to offer this course.
That's great. No, and I'm seeing more and more qualitative methodologies coming up. I'm taking
I agree.
Huh?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm taking this free course from the University of Wisconsin on qualitative research methodologies for medical personnel, and it's been really interesting to see which studies and everything that she's bringing up and who she's talking about, because it fits in exactly with what you're talking about with the nursing and
Right.
students, because they don't believe. As I've been researching ADHD and ADD, it's really hit me how little quantitative understands this group or this population or what's happening. You cannot do this quantitatively. You can't, because it's about people.
Right, right.
And it's about social, their social being, behavior, everything. And it just does not lend itself to quantitative except through something like a questionnaire.
Right.
I have a question for you. Would
Sure.
you mind if I gave your contact information to another there's another person that I'm working with. We have a support group for our master's thesis, and she's doing something on symmetrical, and you might understand this more, but it's just because of what you did for your dissertation. She's doing something that has to do, she's an artist, so she's doing something with symmetrical presentations and whether that will help with online coursework.
Sure.
And I can't, like I said, I can't explain it. But it's her that, and she's having a real hard time finding specifics on that. But what you were talking about with your dissertation seems to fit in with that. So.
Yeah, that's sure. I'd be glad to talk to her. That'll be fine. Just connect me.
Okay, excellent.
And where are you located again?
Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay. I was going to say there's a qualitative conference that's coming up this spring in Chicago. It's outside of Chicago it's at University of Chicago Champlain. That's a huge qualitative conference if you're looking for a vacation.
Really? Where? Okay.
It's called the International Congress of Qualitative Research. And it's an international conference, so that there's going to be people there internationally. And I'm presenting an appreciative inquiry project that I did with librarians at that conference.
Oh, excellent.
But it looks really interesting. I was looking, they sent me like the program of where, I am and the gist of things, which I'm just like a little blip on the radar of this huge conference. But it's run by Denzin, who's one of the big qualitative gurus. Because I think he's at University of, I think it's University of Illinois at Champaign and something else. It's like a hyphenated name, but I'm not really sure. In fact, I looked at how I'm going to get there for this conference, and it's not an easy task. Like, it's not in Chicago, so I'm going to have to go to Chicago and then figure out how to get there from there. It's not easy. It's not an easy task.
It's just way too expensive to hold a conference in Chicago.
Yeah.
I've worked with nonprofits, a lot of medical nonprofits, and gone to their conferences. They're interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So what other questions do you have? So I think maybe if you look at those, the Excel coding tutorial, and then try to code in the Excel file. So that Excel file is some data from a library survey, and those are some of the open-ended questions, only a small part of the open-ended questions. We had like almost 1,000 separate items that came out of that survey, but this is like 200 and something, almost 300 comments. You don't need to do it all, but it'll give you an idea of how to go through and think about what you're going to be coding.
Okay.
You just have to kind of jump in and try it. Like students say, we don't know how to do it. And I'm like, you just have to try it.
Well, I don't, to be honest, I don't think you can. I think everything is a process, and the problem I've had with my classes, and I think this is true of most university classes, and this isn't a knock against the professors or anything, but most of them are survey classes. You sit there and you read so many things in them that by the time you get around to actually applying it,
Right.
it takes you at least another semester to actually get to the point where you learn something.
Right.
And that's only if you did the work.
Right.
You know, that's only if you read it and then wrote about it, and so. And that's part of the study that we're doing in adult learning is, how does everyone actually learn best for them? That's what I'm trying to go for. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A
You know,
lot
how
of
did
my doctoral background was a lot in adult ed as well. Because I was doing a lot of faculty development work, like how do you train teachers and faculty? How do you do professional development for adults, which is a different thing than, a group of freshmen that I have in a class.
I can imagine. Did you enjoy it though?
Yeah, I did a lot. Yeah.
And it was online. Do you do all?
No, it
Oh,
was
this was
not
face
online.
to face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
It was really neat. So I totally get the andragogy, adult principle thing.
Well,
And that might be an interesting framework that you could use in relation to whatever you're coding. So a lot of times in coding, you do like what's called open coding. So I put like a little step-by-step for coding, a little document in the documents this week about the process for coding. And normally what you do is start with what's called open coding, where you just go into the comments and you start saying, this is about this, this is about this, this is about this, this is a word that describes what they're talking about here. And then once you get your coding all done, then you kind of compress them together and put them into buckets, like categories of things. And in your case, you might be able to use the principles or a framework for adult education as a way to organize your coding. So in that way, you wouldn't be doing it kind of emerging from the data, but you would have a framework that you're trying to put all your coding into.
That's a great idea.
Which is a little bit different. So I worked with a social work student who was working on his dissertation, and he said there was a model of something, I forget even what it was about, but he had 5 parts of a model, 5 units in a model, and then he was trying to put his coding from 20 interviews into that model to see if that model really is a model that would work for his context at his institution, which was kind of interesting.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then he used that data, his codes, to then describe those 5 elements of the model in the context of his institution. So then as he looked at his individual coding and the categories of his coding and used that to describe the model as it was at his institution, which was kind of fun.
That is brilliant.
That might be something you want to think about, or even if there's something for ADHD and some type of framework that levels of or types of that you could then code data into.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm actually looking at transformational learning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because the idea is when you get something like 12 million people who supposedly have ADHD, there's something else going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using the language. I'm using language. I'm using language, transformational, um, contextual. In other words, what kind of students come out of, because there's a lot of, and they've been pointing this out, there's an overabundance of kids in poverty who are diagnosed with it. There's an overabundance of black individuals, and 75 to 80% of those who are diagnosed are boys.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in statistics, that's really skewed.
Right.
Just in terms of that. So my idea, but there's also research that shows that there's a correlation or there's a connection between how they view the gifted and how they view ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
Same ways of describing them. It speaks out in class, can't sit still, all these other things.
Right. Kind of the extremes.
Yes, exactly. These are what they're talking about is extremes, and majority of the kids are either average or above average intelligence. So there's all of this. If they're going in and they can't learn, why is it? Is it that they're not being? Are they hearing over and over and over that they're broken? Are they hearing over and over and over that they cannot learn except with medications or counseling? And they go through their lives, a lot of them, thinking that they're not as good as the
Right.
controls or the normal ones. So I think that's a problem. As far as being able to go into a class and hold your own at even in a community college class where you're hands on. So
Right.
that's why I'm looking at this. How can we not build their confidence, but just show them that they're learning differently? And if they learn differently, that doesn't mean it's less than.
Right.
So,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. As you can tell, I had a son who was gifted, and I saw what struggles he was having in the regular classroom. So we all come to a place where we're doing something because of someone we know.
Right.
you know.
Right. We have experience. And that's one of the really important things about qualitative research, because qualitative researchers do research in an area that interests them. Unlike your quantitative researchers who want to stay separate from the research. They don't want to taint their research with their biases, but in qualitative it's okay to have that bias. You just need to be very upfront about it, like where you are and why you're coming into this research. But your experience and your knowledge informs the decisions that you make in your qualitative study. So I think it's a very good thing. You wouldn't want someone that had no idea what was going on looking at contextual aspects of research. So that's a huge difference between the qualitative and the quantitative piece.
Well, and I've been seeing a lot of qualitative studies in this area that come in with that same bias.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the problem, and this is why I've been getting so much pushback on this, because there is a large amount of um, there's a large amount of there's billions of dollars in funding, let's put it this way, to go in and to prove that these people, these millions of people need the medication, need the counseling, and, even accommodations. Everything depends on being able to fund that.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people go in wanting to find the problem so they can fix it.
Right.
And for me, I don't. It comes back to the appreciative inquiry.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach any group? any group, and that includes the normal students who are having problems just because of the way they think about things, how they view education. How do you approach that with seeing them as having solutions already in them and just being able needing to look at it that way, that
Right.
they, you know so it's one of those things. But thank you. It's hard for me because I'm one of those verbal learners, so I have to sit down with my committee members or teachers and say, okay, this is how you describe something to me. Am I getting it right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been going through this for a year now, because I started way before I started writing this a long time ago. Anyway, and there was no one to bounce it off of. So I appreciate this. Thank you.
Sure.
Um, okay. So we're in. So do you think some people just weren't able to get into the Google Hangout?
I'm looking. I've been checking my email because I sent out that email with another link. I thought I could set up the Google Hangout and then change the time on it till today, but
Right.
it wouldn't let me do that for some reason. I
I
don't.
think it's I think it's immediate. I think that's the problem, that they're trying to do it in real time. So
Yeah.
and
So I had to set up another one. So I sent everyone out the new link, but I didn't see. I only got one response back from another student that she wasn't able to make it after all this morning. So maybe I don't know. This is a common thing that I've noticed with teaching online. I have office hours and no one ever comes, and just the way it is, you know.
I know. Well, and I
But
that's
this is a good point in the course when people start coding and they realize that they're not comfortable doing it, to kind of talk about it. You know, in the beginning when we were kind of doing the pretty basic, do a logic model, look at your SWOT analysis, that kind of stuff, I don't think we really needed to talk too much about it. But this, and maybe next week might be, I'll try this again and see if people need to talk about their coding. Because I think that this is where it's really fuzzy. Like qualitative is fuzzy anyway, trying to figure out what they're doing and what kind of questions they're going to ask. But then when you try to do the coding, it gets very fuzzy.
well, I
The
think
first few
qualitative.
days.
Go ahead. I think qualitative. How can I say this? We keep talking about quantitative and qualitative as being separate, and I don't think that's true. I think that when we get into the language and you get a person we have to understand all of our biases in both quantitative and qualitative, because it's the
Right.
type of question we ask. I'm in this course that, on Coursera, that's talking uh, about questions and sensitive questions. They were talking about um, how you go into a poor area and talk about work, and you've got to understand that the poor may be talking illicit things,
Mm-hmm.
like drug,
Mm-hmm.
selling drugs and all of this other stuff. And I wrote in one of the forums, I said, you've got to understand that that's a bias against poverty, and poverty doesn't have anything. Poverty a lot of times has things to do with, an illness, or, just being born into a certain area that doesn't have the resources, and there's all sorts of other things. And so it happens in both qualitative and quantitative.
Yeah, it does.
And I don't think that,
But qualitative gets dinged much more often than quantitative does.
yes, it does.
It's
But do
dinged.
you think that's valid? Because
Well, I think it's easier to separate out those variables in quantitative and try to look at your data. So if we kind of account for some variables, we can get rid of those things so that our data is more accurate. But I don't know. I mean, but then I don't think that what you get in your findings is as useful, because real life has all of these variables that are impacting how things are happening.
Right.
So I think that qualitative takes much more of a perspective of the full context of what's happening where you're studying, around the topic that you're studying, which makes it more complex and more difficult to kind of get at. But I think by trying to get rid of those variables and account for variables, you kind of take out part of that context, which I don't know if that's really, I don't know. That's just my opinion about the piece, you know.
Well, I've been having that discussion with a lot of both my teachers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best of both worlds is really to use both. So the best of both worlds would be to do a mixed method study and to use qualitative to inform your quantitative and to use quantitative to inform your qualitative. So whichever way you would do it, you know, you might do some qualitative to get at the themes to write that quantitative survey that you want to give out. So qualitative can help you narrow down those questions that you want to ask, and then do the quantitative piece, or to do the quantitative piece and find things and then say, but why? Why did this happen? Or why is this happening? Then to follow up with qualitative. So I think that there's a way to integrate the both of them in a best of both worlds and make the best study if you can do both. I think you really can. I feel that way about teaching too. I see a lot of advantage to online, but also face-to-face. So my ideal situation would be to teach in a hybrid way, you know, face-to-face and online, where you can use the value of either to do the pieces that you really need to do. So I think that hybrid of mixed methods is really a good solution, especially depending on what you're trying to study. Now, sometimes your topic is I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here, or I'm looking specifically at perceptions or differences of perceptions or attitudes or whatever, and then it's really a qualitative question. But I think a lot of the questions are mixed methods questions. Another thing I would recommend for you maybe in this course is, and I had my undergraduates do this because I didn't have any data for them when they were doing their data analysis, was to go out on the web and to search interview transcripts and then their topic, because there were quite a few, like there's blogs and websites that have support social media sites for things that students wanted to look at. For example, I had a student that wanted to look at lupus because her mother had lupus.
Oh.
So she found a huge blog website of all people talking about their experiences of living their life with lupus. And I'm like, that was like a gold mine for her to have that transcript of all of those people's opinions and to be able to analyze that to find out about what those topics were around lupus.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So there might be the same thing for your topic, where there might be parents who are, you know, like support groups for parents with children that are having difficulty in school, or there may be physicians that there's transcripts of physicians talking about what's going on with this, and then you could code that, and that might give you you might be more engaged in coding that than in library comment data.
Actually, the library comment data is pretty interesting too, just because I always go into a place thinking, okay, you know, how are people engaging? And that's what's been interesting in this forum is if you look, because this is all about engagement. Mm-hmm. This is all about, you know, how does the student come in best prepared? Any student come in best prepared. How do they engage? Do they engage face to face, or are there far too many factors that bother them face to face? So how do you make an online, like you said, hybrid enough to satisfy their need to connect but also to distance themselves.
Mhm.
Because I haven't, you are absolutely correct that there is, I mean, and there hasn't been, I think I understand that you can actually add the Google Hangout or one of those to a MOOC.
Mhm.
And I was thinking that that would be a good way to do, because I was creating, okay, I've been creating a course on a way for adults to learn fractions
Mhm.
that isn't the normal way, that gives them games and other kind of visuals to think of fractions in a different way so they can get it in one way or another. And the way I was going to do it was to add a game that built on that idea, and that they could use to, mix and match as far as fractions were concerned, but also use in a 6-week course that mixed method. Because I know that because I've been doing a lot of studies on that kind of thing, and they show that kids have a much better time, because there's Khan's Academy,
Mhm.
and the only way that he was able to actually, or that platform was good, is to bring it in a classroom and have the teacher with the child working with them.
Right.
Putting them in front of a computer and just letting them go didn't do a thing. It didn't help. They didn't learn. But you added that teacher, you added that voice, to help when you were stuck, and that's what worked. So, and that makes sense to me. So,
Mhm.
anyway, oh, to get back, yeah, we call this squirrel. Have you ever seen Up?
No, I haven't. I
Okay,
didn't.
you gotta see it, because there's a dog who's sitting there, and it does remind me of a lot of students and me. But the dog is sitting there and really paying attention, and suddenly there's a squirrel, and
Yep.
and the dog goes chasing off the squirrel. So um,
Distraction.
that to me is the nature. That's to me is the nature of focus and attention.
Mhm.
Is yes, you're going to pay attention to what's right in front of you, and then at a certain moment, it's no longer interesting,
Right.
and they run off. So I that's why I asked for this kind of face to face. But not too many people, yeah, know how to use this.
Yeah, I use
Um,
it for office hours a lot for people that are not. I mean, I've taught a lot of online courses on our campus, and the people are on campus, they're just taking the course online. So they contact me and say, "Can I come and see you? Like, is that against
yes.
the rules in an online course?" And I'm like, "No, it's not against the rules. Please come and see me if that's what you want to do." But they think because it's all online that they can't do that. But when you have people that are off campus, it's really hard. So I think the office hours or an opportunity to talk through some issues is just really valuable. But it's not really people that are taking an online course are taking it because they want flexibility with their schedule. So trying to get people to all agree to a time is like herding cats.
Well, what I found is I would actually participate, and this is another one of those things. I would actually participate in an online conference for my classes, but they would record them.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go back, because there's a difference in focus there too.
Right.
See, I'm doing this all about processing. I'm trying to figure out how people process both online and off when they're learning, and then how they code that in their brains, encode that in their brains. If you want to go with a computer.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, just what we need.
Yeah, but I think people do. I mean, I think they do prefer different methods. I talk to faculty all the time about this, and then they say, well, should we be teaching them where they're always comfortable? Like, do we want to make sure that we do everything, and especially this comes up a lot in K to 12 with differentiated instruction. Do we want to differentiate everything to meet everyone's needs exactly so that they're never kind of stretched to think about something in a different way, which is a good point. So, if you make it really easy for everyone to always learn the way they learn in school, then when they get to real world and they're not accommodating their style the way that it's been accommodated in school, then how do they learn how to adapt to what other people are doing? So I think it kind of goes both ways on how that gets figured out.
But I see what you're saying, but I have this discussion a lot with teachers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that no matter if you try to aid their learning, that there's a point, it's challenging for everybody to learn in the first place, if we
Mm-hmm.
look at it that way.
Right.
Um, but if you, to me, if you start not accommodating, but actually teaching in different ways within the same classroom,
Right.
and each child has a chance to figure that out, figure out where, okay, yes, I
It
need to,
works for me.
yeah, what works for me, then that helps resilience.
Right.
Because they're figuring out, then they can go out into the bigger world and say, it didn't work for me to sit in the classroom, but I need that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're actually learning how to teach themselves and how best to go out there and view the world. And so I think there's just a problem with how the Disability Act has been applied in classes, and how it seems like a burden to them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But anyway, and so that's what I'm thinking, that we need to stop going, because okay, this has been my analogy, is that we're so scientifically geared that you have, okay, when you go in and you get the average, or you get the mean, or you get the spread, that it's usually that 30% in the middle that is considered normal, and that we teach to, or
Mm-hmm.
that we can reach easily without any problems, that kind of thing. But that leaves 70% on either side that we're not addressing.
Right.
Some need some, so how do we do this without breaking the bank, without hurting teachers? Because teachers are always saying, I need a better way to I want to reach this child, I want
Mm-hmm.
to do something for them, or I want to reach this adult. You have people, even in a master's classes, where they're looking at this thinking, okay, I can get a C, I don't have to work at it, I don't have to do anything. Well, a C means you don't pass, you don't. So,
Yep.
I think it's a difficult thing. But you've been on here for a long time just with me, so I appreciate it. I really do. And yeah, if I can pass this along to your information along to her name is Anita Quintana,
Okay.
and she just, I think she's getting discouraged because people are telling her there's nothing that she can use, and I think there's a lot, especially with your dissertation and other things that would help her.
Okay. Sure.
So
Pass it along. I'll take a look and see if I can find anything. And
okay.
then you look and see if you can find something online, some type of interview transcript. Like, even if it's someone talking on YouTube, you might be able to get a transcript from YouTube that you could use
Okay.
to analyze.
Well, I was thinking of going through these studies that I have, the phenomenological and the qualitative,
Hmm.
and just working with some of those to see how I would have coded it differently than they did.
But you won't have the raw data,
I won't, but I
right?
do have some of the stuff that they have, some quotes from there that I could pick and
Right. You could do that.
along with along with what you've given me. I think that and to be able to look at the different way that people have gone through too and looked at it. Because to
Right.
me, there needs to be a comparison between how people did that and qualitative, because that gets into how we use language and how we see language. Is
Right.
how you code to me.
And
I
it
don't.
looks like people are going to be using some of their own data, because somebody emailed me yesterday that they have data that they want to use, student data,
Oh,
um,
great.
that from an online discussion board that they're going to use to code. So it'll be interesting to see everyone's different, the different types of data that they're coding, which will be hopefully kind of interesting. But it looks like everybody doesn't post anything till the end of the weekend, so I've kind of adjusted my work schedule to accommodate.
Well, and this is the one I'm taking. I'm taking two other classes along with this one at the moment, sort of crash courses, but they are actually helping because I'm taking one on questionnaire and one on inference and statistics. And
Hmm.
those are all things you need to actually understand any of this and to
Yeah,
go.
true.
But um,
All right, and I'll take a look and see if I can find anything. We have a database at work that I think has some medical case studies in it. So let me see if there's anything in there that I can find that maybe you could code. I mean, you technically could code articles on this topic, actual
yeah,
PDF articles, and then look at the themes that come out between the articles. That would be one thing you
that
could do too. But
that's a great idea. Well, even
I was just working
just
with a law class yesterday. I mean, yesterday, Friday. Is yesterday Friday? Yes, it was
yes.
Friday. Um, a law professor who has her students looking at community and social responsibility of corporations. So she selected corporations that had some crisis happen, so they're looking at documents before the crisis and documents after the crisis, and they're doing qualitative analysis on those documents, looking
Oh, that's
for
great.
verbiage. Like, how many times before did they talk about human rights? Like the one was pharmaceutical company. How many times before this big, media kind of hoopla that happened around the company did they mention human rights, and then how many times after? So she has kind of predetermined phrases that she's looking for in these documents, and the students are looking at the differences in the numbers of codes in each of those documents or around those topics. It's kind of interesting.
That is a great idea. Well, and you gave me an idea too, because what I could do is compare what is said, what is diagnostically, the DMSV or
Mm-hmm. Right.
yeah, DSMV,
Mm-hmm.
um, what that says and what they say within, I mean, because they're going to simply talk about intelligence and successes and training and what all that means to them.
Yeah.
So looking to see what words they might echo, or don't echo for that matter, would really inform this. Thank you.
Yeah. And talking to some physicians or medical staff that work with them to get the differences in how they talk about it as well would be kind of interesting.
That would be.
Mhm.
Whoa, thank you. You just gave me a way to do this.
Okay,
So
great.
thank you, Donna.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm willing. Yeah, I'm willing because I need the connection. I'd like to see, who we're working with. And I'm sorry I couldn't add the video, but it's been one of those days.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. I do. My son's abroad, and we a lot of times have to Skype without video too because his connection. He was in China for 3 years, and we'd go like 10 minutes, and then our connection would go, so we'd have to do it without audio, without video. So it's a
oh
common
man,
thing.
it's true. Well, and yeah, I Skype a lot, but that it cuts out way too much. But this has been
Yeah,
pretty good. Thanks.
it
This
has
has
been pretty good.
you haven't cut out. You've been, as far as the video, it's been consistent. Although the voice of the audio has been off with the lips.
Yeah, well, I think that's pretty typical.
Yeah, I do too. We're just not
But
real. Thank you so much.
okay, so just email me with any questions, and I'll take a look at what I can find around your topic, because maybe I can find some text that might be interesting to code, more interesting than the library stuff, and then we'll go from there. Okay? So next
Okay.
week we're going to talk more about coding, and then the last week we're going to talk about um, how do we report what we find related to our codes, because that's the other really important part.
It is the
Kind of
analysis.
telling that story of what you're seeing in the data, which is very different from, I had a null hypothesis and that's what my analysis is.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a little bit different for doing qualitative. So we're going to talk about that in the last week. Okay?
Excellent. Thank you, Donna.
Sure thing. Well, have a good weekend.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.